Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to this mini course in derivatives. This is Eric, the voice behind markets, and in today's video, we will discuss forwards and futures. Two seemingly identical derivative products, yet with key distinctive features. We'll also discuss the importance of the clearinghouse and the idea behind standardized contracts. So, let's get to business. The volume that the futures market currently moves is enormous, but it all started when the forward contracts became popular. When dealing with forwards, we're talking about custom-made term contracts between buyers and sellers. But the thing is, how can these two parties keep their word? Or what if one of the parties needs to get out of the agreement early on? It was precisely from those features that the futures contracts were born in the 19th century in the United States. Now, when we're dealing with futures, we're talking about standardized contracts listed on an organized market. Here, you can think of a futures exchange. It is worth noting that forward-type contracts continue to exist. After all, a foreign exchange insurance is nothing more than a forward exchange rate, but futures have a series of particularities that, by facilitating their operations, have made their use very widespread in the financial sector. The two basic characteristics that have facilitated the great development of the futures market, and also of options, are 1. Being listed on an organized market with a clearinghouse, and 2. Being able to be easily bought and sold on the open market as they are standardized contracts, such as the shares listed on the stock market. These two singularities mean that a large trading volume can be generated, and an individual investor can easily find a counterparty, or, in other words, be able to enter and exit the market without too many difficulties. As I mentioned a moment ago, futures come from forwards, and just like love and marriage, horse and carriage, you truly can have one without the other. Let's go back to mid-19th century in the state of Illinois in the United States, where producers of raw materials on the one hand, and buyers/distributors of those same raw materials on the other, were exposed to the continuous risk of fluctuation of prices in the traditional spot market. The former feared that the price would be at a minimum when they decided to sell their production, and the latter feared the opposite, that the price would be at a maximum when they decided to buy. How could both parties counteract such risk? Simple, by setting up reasonable prices between them. Contracts began to be made between individuals of both groups, which basically established the quantity and quality of raw materials to be delivered and received, the future delivery date or expiration of the contract, and the agreed price payable on that determined future date. This type of structured contract tailored between the two parties, that is, producers and buyers, was called and continues to be called a forward. Let's see an example. A producer and a buyer of wheat agree on the following forward contract on September 1st. 10,500 kilograms of wheat to be delivered and received on December 3rd, with an agreed price payable also on December 3rd of $3.75 per kilogram. From that moment on September 1st, regardless if the price of wheat goes up or down on the spot market, this will not affect the buyers and the producers, as both sides know that one will buy and the other one will sell 10,500 kilograms of wheat at $3.75 per kilogram on December 3rd. Thus, from the appearance of the forward contract, two possible operations could be carried out with any commodity, be it wheat, soybeans, barley, or you name it. They are spot trading, that is, in which trading and settlement/clearing are simultaneous in time, or at the most there is a short time lag due to administrative reasons. And forward or futures trading, where trading and settlement/clearing have a time lag greater than that established for spot transactions.
It's alive! It's alive! It's alive! It's alive! It's alive!
In a nutshell, we can say that a forward is an agreement by which both negotiating parties agree to buy and sell a number of goods or securities at a future date and at a price stipulated in advance. Going back to our previous example, today, September 1st, the parties negotiate the forward sale of 10,500 kilograms of wheat to be settled and compensated on December 3rd at the agreed price of $3.75 per kilogram. With this forward on wheat, the following is achieved. First, the selling party of the forward, that is the wheat producer, secures the sale on December 3rd of 10,500 kilograms of its wheat at $3.75 per kilogram, but is also required to deliver the wheat to the purchasing party on the same day, December 3rd. And second, the buying party of the forward, that is the buyer/distributor of wheat, ensures a buying cost of 10,500 kilograms of wheat at $3.75 per kilogram on December 3rd, but is also obliged to buy it from the selling party that same day, December 3rd.
Sounds like a lot of... Hoopla! Sounds like a lot of... Hoopla! Sounds like a... Hoopla!
Hoopla! However, this operation in practice is subject to certain problems. Basically three. To begin with, the difficulty in finding counterparties, since there was no specific physical location or negotiating center where bidders and applicants could go. 2. You may have breaches. One of the parties was unwilling or unable to meet its commitment on the due date. Could it be due to counterparty or insolvency risk? And third, as the contracts were tailored, the agreement was not easy. It had to be negotiated, apart from the price, the quantity, the quality, the expiration date, how and when the delivery should be made, and much more. It can be said that the origin of the futures market is found in the problems presented by forwards. The solution to these three problems described led to the creation of the futures market. The first problem dealt with the difficulty of balancing supply and demand. The solution: get several partners to invest their money and create a market with a specific physical location. That way, buyers and suppliers already have a meeting place, and the real futures market is born. Let's appreciate the following picture. In 1865, the first permanent home of the CBOT, or Chicago Board of Trade, was established in the Chamber of Commerce building at LaSalle, Washington. Let's move on to the second problem, the breaches. Here the solution would be to introduce a clearinghouse that will stand between both parties and act as the other legal counterparty for each of the parties. Let me explain what this means and what significance it has. If today our seller of wheat agrees with our buyer of wheat through a futures contract the purchase and sale of a specific quantity of wheat at a price and at a future expiration date, the legal commitment that is generated today is not bilateral, only between the two of them, as in the case of forwards. The contract type would look like this. You have a buyer and a seller. In the case of the futures, the clearinghouse assumes the commitment of each seller and each buyer. Legally, although the agreement is freely agreed between these two parties, if the transaction has been carried out within the framework of the futures market, a contract of the following type is generated. You have a buyer, the clearinghouse, and a seller. Here, the buyer and the seller do not mutually commit to each other, since the futures market works as a blind market, similar to the stock exchange, in which the buyer and the seller do not know with whom they're making a transaction. Thus, in the futures market, the buyer takes a legal commitment with the clearinghouse, not with the seller, to receive the wheat and to pay for it at the price and on the agreed date. And the clearinghouse undertakes with the buyer to deliver that wheat on that date. Likewise, the seller takes a legal commitment with the clearinghouse, not with the buyer, to deliver the wheat on the agreed date, and the clearinghouse agrees with the seller to pay the agreed price. In theory, if both parties comply, the clearinghouse would not have to act as a pure liquidator/compensator for each transaction. In our example, that means coordinating the delivery of the wheat and the money between the buyer and the seller. But as we all know, what works in paper tends to fail in practice. If any of the parties do not comply, The clearinghouse must fulfill the commitment on behalf of the person who has breached the contract, reserving the right to take as many legal actions as it deems appropriate against that non-compliant party. Here we just covered one of the core ideas of this video, guys, that the counterparty risk that exists in forward operations is eliminated in futures operations due to the existence of the clearinghouse. Moreover, as it is integrated with the same market governing company or in a legally different company but operationally linked, it will fulfill the following functions. First and foremost, the subrogation of the contractual obligations of the buyer and the seller. That, my friends, in plain English, means that being a seller for the buyer and a buyer for the seller. And second, serve as a counterparty for risk purposes, guaranteeing a proper end to all transactions. To fulfill these functions, the clearinghouse established a system of guarantees whose core elements are margin accounts or guarantee deposits. That means a certain amount of money must be deposited in the clearinghouse each time a buying or selling position is opened. When the operation is closed, the clearinghouse returns that deposit. Next we have daily settlements, or keeping track of daily profit and losses for each party. We will see the importance of this later. At last, but not least, we have other complementary measures. They include position limits, supervision and surveillance fees, registry of recognized members, trading systems, settlement and clearing systems, supervision of current positions, and market orders in real time, just to name a few. Finally, the third and last problem described before, the complexity of contracts. The proposed solution: to speed up agreements between parties, the market standardized the contracts that buyers and sellers can use. Similar as with forward contracts, the parties dive in all kinds of minutiae regarding the content of the contract. Basically, quantity, quality, expiration, and delivery. But in the futures market, transactions must be made using the standard contracts established. And so, all contracts refer to the same quantity. For example, a nominal 10,000 kilograms of wheat per contract. The same quality, say in terms of variety, texture, or type, the same form of delivery. Here the market provides its own warehouses to organize and coordinate delivery, and limited maturities, generally monthly or quarterly. In short, if that producer and that buyer of wheat presented in our previous example now wanted to carry out a similar hedging transaction, but doing it under the legal certainty of the futures market, what should they do? At the risk of repeating myself, please, dear viewer, let's go back one more time to our example. A producer and a buyer of wheat agreed on the following forward contract on September 1st to deliver and receive 10,500 kilograms of wheat on December 3rd with an agreed price payable on December 3rd of $3.75 per kilogram. If the following year they wish to repeat a similar transaction, but instead of using a tailored contract such as a forward, and now they wish to carry it out using futures, they will have to adapt to the standardized market contracts and would have to carry out a transaction similar to this one. Trade 10 or 11 contracts. Both the buyer and the seller must adapt to the standard or nominal amount of the futures market contract. Here, we will assume that each of the futures contracts covers 1,000 kilograms of wheat. Then, if they want to hedge the 10,500 kilograms, they can only hedge either 10,000 or 11,000 kilograms. In terms of expiration, they will choose the standard expiration closest to December 3rd, which is their desired date. However, it will be seen later that the expiration date has little relevance in practice. The quality of the deliverable wheat and the delivery, that means where and how the wheat is delivered or received at maturity, do not need to be negotiated, since they are stipulated in a standard way in the futures contract, and therefore, it's the same for all contracts. In the event of a conflict between the parties due to poor quality of the product or poor delivery thereof, both parties agree that the clearinghouse or an independent body delegated by it will act as a moderator of that conflict. And as you may have noticed, dear viewer, the price is the only thing left to free negotiation between both parties. As you can see, future contracts offer highly standardized features at the level of specific maturities, nominal size of the contract, delivery and reception. Here I would like to point out that sometimes they are not simultaneous processes, but rather sequenced, especially in raw materials, legal norms and guidelines of the market and the clearinghouse, and trading hours. In fact, this standardization is similar to that of the stock market. The same series of shares of a listed company are identical since they have the same specifications. For example, the same face value, the same political rights, the same economic rights, and more. Only the price is left to the free negotiation of the market participants. This facilitates trading and translates into a greater volume of transactions for that product in that market, with the advantage of having tight bid and ask prices with a high degree of transparency and a significant level of liquidity. Such is a commonality within the stock market, the futures market, or any other market where they offer a standardized asset. Well, dear viewer, we've covered a lot of things in this topic, so let's wrap it up. In general, the futures market is characterized by 1. Being a privately owned marketplace with a specific physical location, or nowadays an electronic one. 2. Having a clearinghouse that is interposed between the contracting parties in order to subrogate the contractual obligations of the negotiating parties. That means being a seller for the buyer and a buyer for the seller. And to provide compensation and guarantee of the good outcome of each transaction. The mechanisms of guarantees to be deposit, which will be seen in detail at a later video, is the safeguard of this risk assumed by the clearinghouse. 3. Having a standard contract. That is, same quantity, same quality, same expiration date, and even same delivery conditions. And 4. Being an organized market supervised by the corresponding regulatory authorities. That way, you could say that a future is nothing but a standardized forward quoted on an organized market with a clearinghouse. It's precisely these two concepts, the standardization of contracts and the existence of a clearinghouse, that make it easier for speculators to enter and exit the market easily. That way, they can provide liquidity to the market without the need to deliver or receive the underlying good, since they will be able to close the acquired commitments before expiration. We will clarify the latter in the next video. Well, dear viewer, we reached the end of the second video. I hope that the topics that we've covered so far are starting to make sense. Remember that each topic that we will cover in the future builds on the content of previous videos. So please, let me know in the comments if you have any questions. Otherwise, if you liked the video, please like, subscribe, or share it with anyone you think could be useful. This is Eric from Markets, and I hope to see you in the next video.
You hear me, babies? Good. Real good. Adios.